defense spending, transportation, sea level rise. Tonight, a look at Hampton Roads' economic growth and the state of the region. This is What Matters. Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis. Welcome to our brand new home. Our new set is part of WHRO's 50th anniversary, a celebration we'll be bringing you all year long. Tonight, we consider the state of the region, its biggest challenges and its opportunities. Every year for the past 11, ODU's President-Emeritus, Dr. James Koch, leads the publication of the State of the Region report. And Dr. Koch joins us tonight, along with Dana Dickens, who is the president and CEO of the Hampton Roads Partnership. They're embarked on a program called Vision Hampton Roads. Doug Smith is with us as well. He's vice president of Kaufman and Knowles Consulting, and he's been involved in the CEDS process, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Thanks to all of you for being with us tonight. Nice to have you with us. So, Dr. Koch, 11 years. It's a gorgeous publication that comes out every year and addresses some really critically important issues in the region. You really thought, I think, three were really sort of topmost and center for us.
Well, I think that this is a report that is designed to make people think about issues, to engage us, not necessarily to tell us what we ought to believe, but to present factual analysis and the like, and then let people run with it from there. And this particular report, like many of them, has attracted a bit of attention on a couple of issues. But interestingly, the issues this year aren't even in the top three historically among those that attract the most attention. Major league sports, sand replenishment in Virginia Beach, things like that attracted more attention at the time. But the all-time attention leader is rising sea levels.
Which you pointed out is I think you called that the problem of the 21st century, a real significant one for this community. Did your research, what did your research show around sea level rise? The conventional wisdom is that we are the second leading locality in the country, other than New Orleans, affected by sea level rise.
Yeah, over the last century, sea levels have gone up something like 18 inches in the region. If that happens again, then just even ordinary storms are going to be absolutely disastrous for us. This is a combination of actually the ocean rising and also the land is sinking. We're sinking at the rate of maybe 4 or 5 inches a century, and so that's a problem for us. And the reason this is such an attention getter is it really does strike at people's economic livelihoods and real estate values and things like that, but also because some people, frankly, don't think it's occurring.
And that is a piece of the story here, too, in terms of reaction and response to it, because inevitably it gets linked to climate change, and then there's a whole conversation about the situation with climate change, and some people don't believe that's a fact either, so there we are. But if you look at it just on the face of it, and if you put the ruler in the water, things are going on with sea level rise. And if we look as well at just some of the insurance claims from some of these recent storms, it seems there's a pretty compelling story, regardless of what you think about what causes it, just in terms of the fact of it.
Yes, and when I talk about these kinds of things, I tend to avoid discussions of climate change because that has certain meanings to some people. And I simply say, look at the tidal gauge at Sewell's Point. This is what's happened over the last century. The water's going up. What should we do about it? What kinds of damage might that impose on us? And try to go at it from that angle. You know,
and it seems on this issue, and we're glad to have Doug Smith with us tonight, who's also not only worked on some of these visioning projects, but also is someone who has served in elective office. These kinds of issues, it seems, we're hearing more and more about them at the city council level.
No, you really do. And we talked before the program at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission last year. We decided that this issue of sea level rise needed to be one of the priorities it was focused on. And when you went around the room and listened to the different mayors and folks in the room talking, you found out that after every one of these weather events, whether you want to call it a nor'easter or a hurricane or something even milder, council chambers were filled with people saying, I can't get to my house, my street is flooded, I can't get home, I can't get out of my house, my car flooded. So it is very real, and localities are making, in some cases, some near-term decisions to alleviate some of these things, when in the reality may be the smarter decision might be a different, the long-term decision might be a smarter one, but they're difficult political decisions.
Sure.
They're difficult economic decisions for these localities.
I think the New York Times did an article about a month or so ago in which they sort of told that story from the perspective of a community in Norfolk called Larchmont,
right,
where some of the residents have said, look, we need you to lift the street and help us out here, and there is money, you know, there was money made available to do that. But if you multiply that money over the number of people who will be affected, right, you kind of really have to ask yourself if that's the right strategy over the longer term.
Should you have bought the houses?
Well, there is that, isn't
right,
there? And that certainly is one of the strategies, right, that is under consideration in some cases. This question has a lot of pretty significant potentials around it, doesn't it? In terms of perhaps abandoning land, which is a pretty complicated issue if you happen to own that land, I suppose. But there are a lot of implications of this research.
Yeah, along with the Planning District Commission, we at Old Dominion University are now doing a study that looks at the economic damage that flooding will cause if we don't do anything about it, both looking at the structures that would be damaged, but also at the value of the economic activity that won't occur if flooding occurs. And so the object there is really to provide the various cities and counties with information so that they can then take action on their own or do it, hopefully, in a joint fashion.
Dana Dickens is the president of the Hampton Roads Partnership, and he too has been in elective office as well as the mayor of Suffolk. Do you have the sense that people are getting hold of this? I mean, do you have the sense that people are understanding what the implications here are at the moment?
I think so. You have to recognize the amount of discussion in the public. I think people are really getting it, and obviously on the local government level, it's a bigger issue.
Sure.
And I think as you move along and as we see more and more of the flooding, obviously it'll be a bigger and bigger issue.
You took a lot of heat for that, for your comments and your analysis on that, and you said there was a lot of reaction around it. What do you think that was about?
Well, I think, to be very straightforward, some people simply don't think that the water is rising, or some people get this connected to global warming that some people don't believe in either, and a combination of things then causes them to say, well, I'm not sure I believe that. And then as well, some people don't want to talk about this as a topic because they think it might destroy the real estate market or really decrease the value of something they own, so they would prefer to sort of push it behind.
Rising water? What rising water? Right. Doug Smith, that second point that Dr. Koch raises about the implications of having the conversation really points out the delicate nature of this from a political perspective, because it's almost a situation where you can raise the issue and say, boy, we're noticing something here. Here are the implications of doing nothing. The next question is, okay, so what do we do? And there are not a lot of terrific answers at the moment, or not.
Well, there's some simple things.
Okay.
Maybe not inexpensive, but in the scheme of things, not overly expensive. One of it is just to get consistent mapping of the entire region, so that you have different communities are on different systems, things that were measured at different times. So there's something called LIDAR, I think is the term, where you are taking the topographic information for the whole region. There's actually a very simple, on the one hand, opportunity for the region to make sure that we know what we've got everywhere. So there are some things that I think are not controversial that make you smarter that you could be doing. And he and Dr. Koch and I have had this conversation of how do you have the conversation in such a way that you don't frighten everybody,
sure,
but you do it in a thoughtful and productive manner.
Yeah.
So it is a challenge.
And where are we with the LIDAR project? Is that underway? Are we in the process of getting that? Is it a cost issue?
A portion of the region already has been mapped, and most of the military facilities have been mapped, but there are major parts of our cities and counties that haven't been mapped in this really precise fashion, and ideally we would do this together, and it wouldn't be horribly expensive. It might be, less than $500,000 for the entire region, but it really is, as Doug says, that's the place to start. We have to know essentially what ground we have in order to say this is what will get covered up. So I see this as a joint project that someone like HRPDC would do, or perhaps we go to the federal government. Well, those guys. And ask for
that's
some
right.
money.
That's right. Well, I tell you, it is a fact that until you you have all the information you need, it's really hard to make intelligent choices about what to do about it. Dana Dickens, Hampton Roads Partnership has been engaged in some interesting work, and there are a couple of different terms going around, so I want to make sure that we're all clear on what we're talking about. Okay. Hampton Roads Partnership in general is in business to do what?
The Hampton Roads Partnership's mission is to make Hampton Roads more competitive. The partnership's 125 members. It's made up of chief elected officials of all 17 counties and cities in the region, business leaders, university presidents, labor, and military, the major commanding officers of the military, all on the board. And the idea is to make the region more competitive. And thanks to Dr. Koch's regional State of the Region report, he brought to bear an issue that's really important to all of us, and that is that the military is such a huge part of our economy in Hampton Roads, and north of 45%, that it puts us in a little bit more of a vulnerable position than we would like to be in.
And I think this was interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Koch, but it seems like we have been trying for some years to appreciate our military, our defense contracting business, but yet diversify so that we don't have all those eggs in one basket. And we've been pretty good about doing that, but because of recent events, the percent remains in some ways the same because the spending has gone up in that sector.
Yes, military spending has in the region virtually doubled over the last decade, so it's been a really good thing for us, and compensation levels have risen, and that's been good for the real estate market, for retailers, and nearly everyone. But now that's beginning to taper off, and if one listens at all to Secretary Gates and President Obama, it does appear as if we might be in for a fairly lean 5 or 10 years in terms of additional defense spending, although one never knows what's going to happen internationally. But things have changed, and I think we have to adjust to that, and I think the Hampton Roads Partnership and its efforts are absolutely key in this because they point us in the directions we need to go.
So since we last talked, we have more clarity now about the impact of the Joint Forces Command situation, and it looks like about half the jobs are going away, but half of them it looks like are going to stay. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think this is, all things considered, a very good result for us. Much will depend upon which half of those jobs there are because they're all paid differently and the like, and I would like to see our modeling and simulation things remain as opposed to some other things, but we don't quite know exactly what's going to happen yet.
And it's an interesting development that we've continued to watch, and I think was pretty surprising when it came to light last year. Dana Dickens, give us a sense of Vision Hampton Roads and Innovate Hampton Roads and how those relate to the work of the partnership.
All right, we've spent a year working on a comprehensive economic development strategy for the entire region, which we call Vision Hampton Roads. It includes efforts to support the military, tourism, and the ports, which are major economic engines in Hampton Roads. And it includes an opportunity for us to diversify that economy from those three major economic engines. Obviously, we want to keep those at as high a level as we possibly can, but we want to bring other aspects. And we're looking at a lot of technology type of industries such as modeling and simulation, which Dr. Koch refers to as very important. We want to talk about robotics, bioscience, aerospace industry, and those are and offshore wind energy is another one. So what we're looking at is as part of this overall comprehensive economic development strategy, we're focusing on innovation. We have been for many years, and rightfully so, very dependent on the military, and we have a military orientation, a military state of mind, if you will. And what we want to do is change that a little bit to more of an innovation attitude and focus on these industries that I talk about.
And Doug Smith, there's some. You did a lot of work on this process, on the CEDS process, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and boy, you know, there's a lot of reason to go for those kinds of jobs, isn't there, in terms of the dollar value that they bring into the region and the education level.
There really is. It really, Kathy, for me, it's about the region taking control of its economic destiny. You know, when you think about the military, the tourism, the port, largely the growth of those things is out of our control. It's influenced by global matters. But when you deal with the things that Dana's talking about, which is the innovation-led economy, that's where the real jobs are being created. That's where the high-paying jobs are being created, and there are terrific models in other communities that we've looked at. There's a model in Albuquerque called TVC. It's been around for 10 or 15 years, doing a lot of what we're talking about doing with Innovate Hampton Roads. TVC, Technology Ventures Corporation, or something. I think that's it. A community much like ours, less than 1 million people, a couple $100 million in research and development that takes place. They've generated 113 companies, 13,000 jobs, and something like a 1.1 or 1.2 billion dollars of investment. That's when we want to nurture the core economy, but that's how we're going to grow our economy, and that's how we're going to really take control of our economic destiny.
And so, what are these people who are in the prospect of sort of spinning off this technology? Sure. What do they tell you this region needs to be successful in that regard? Because there's a lot of ground to cover between, hey, we've got some technology, it'd be great to privatize it, and having a company up and ready to go.
It's a variety of things, but in simplest terms, I think what Innovate is talking about, Innovate Hampton Roads is talking about connecting people and ideas and resources money. And part of it is making sure that these folks have access to the research that's taking place at EVMS or Old Dominion or the different labs in the area. Some of it is about having seed money. You know, we do a reasonable job of venture capital for the firms that are up and running, but what is that seed money that helps me get my $250,000 or $500,000 that takes my idea from an idea to something that has conception, that has relevance, and then ultimately turn it into something that somebody wants.
So that's where a lot of this effort is.
Yeah.
And Dr. Koch, you're an economist, so you know how this works. Is this the right strategy and approach to take to sort of build an industry?
Oh, I think very much. I'm a cheerleader of both of these gentlemen in terms of what they're trying to accomplish, because that's really the future for us, and in no way do we want to minimize the defense aspects of what's going on here. We simply have to recognize that that's probably not going to be the kind of growth engine in the future that it has been in the past, and so we need to be looking at some of these other things, and so I think they're absolutely on the right track.
One interview I read that you did in the wake of the State of the Region report, and I think I'm attributing this correctly. If you agree with it, you'll think it's a great idea. If you don't, you'll distance yourself from it instantly. But is this idea of marrying up industry, marrying up innovative industries with healthcare, something along the lines of a Johns Hopkins connection for this region? Because we do have a medical school, we have research and technology, and now with the proton facility coming on board in Hampton, you know, there is some really exciting medical research going on here.
Our medical/health sector is a little bit smaller within our region than one would see in Richmond or Baltimore or some other places up and down the coast, and I think that's a fertile area for us to exploit and expand. I think all one has to do is look at the trend of medical and health expenditures to know that that's a growth area, and so to use riding the horse metaphor, I think that's a horse that we ought to try to ride, and I think it will be a profitable one.
So I want to ask both of you, as you think about what would advance this agenda from the perspective of the general public, what kinds of initiatives the general public could undertake if this were an agenda that they felt like advancing, and what you might look for out of the General Assembly. Two sort of different support systems there. Doug Smith, what would you
maybe answer it this way. I think that in order for this initiative, this effort to be successful, it's got to be private sector led. And I think that's a different mentality for this region than we have had historically. And so I think it takes a little bit of a mindset change. There's a role for government. There's an important role for government, but it is one of funding and facilitating certain components of this. But if this is going to really work, the private sector has got to say, we want to invest in these opportunities. We want to make sure these different incubators and programs happen. We want to make sure that within Hampton Roads there is a culture that rewards experimentation and risk. And again, I think that is the private sector that's really got to step up and make that happen.
How about you, Dana Dickens? How would you
we're working on a goal, if you will, a regional goal. And it will relate to the amount of military spending. So if it's if the number is X, what we want to do is get every citizen in Hampton Roads thinking about this goal And we want all the cities and the counties and the businesses and the organizations all aligning our assets and working towards that goal. If we're all working towards the same goal, and that goal will obviously benefit all of us, then we are much more likely to be successful than if we're all going in different directions and trying to achieve different things. So the alignment of all of our assets is the piece that we really want people to grab hold of.
And it makes me think about all the colleges and universities in this region and these bright young minds coming out of these places. If we can get the top 10 or 20 of them and really talk to them and give them programs that would help them understand what a great region this is, you might be able to keep a few of them a little closer to home.
Well, it's all about a sense of place, and
yes,
you can have all the great and wonderful jobs in the world, but if you don't have a place people want to live, then you're not going to get there.
Right, and there you are. So it's Innovate Hampton Roads. It's an initiative out of the Hampton Roads Partnership. hrp.org is the website where people can learn more. You can read the Innovate Hampton Roads plan and the comprehensive economic development strategies as well. And all the work's been going on for several years now and sort of culminating in this initiative. So congratulations, Dana Dickens. Nice to have you with us. Doug Smith, thank you for being here as well. And Dr. Jim Koch, thank you so much for being back with us from Old Dominion, working on the 12th edition now. Thanks again for watching. I'm Kathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at what matters.